Hello, everybody. If you're in my ACSL Learning Pod, welcome. And if you found this randomly on YouTube, also welcome. What we're going to do today in preparation for programming contest number 3 at the junior level is I'm going to go through a sample programming problem and sort of show you one way of doing it. Usually in class, we don't have time to do an entire problem. After all, you have 3 days to do it, and we only have an hour, and we have other things we do. But here I have more time, and more importantly, I can pause things while I work out the details or go get something to drink or something like that. So don't worry, it won't be hours of video of me solving the problem, but hopefully I can show you the process. So the first thing in the process is we're going to look at the problem. So let me share my screen. And of course, the last thing that was up there was me launching Zoom, but instead I'm going to the ACSL homepage because they have sample problems there. And I want to use one of theirs, so I'm going to click on Get Started and then Study Materials. And then I'm going to go down to the junior division, and I am going to click on Sample Contest 3 Programming Problem, and that brings up the problem. I think I have room to zoom in a little bit, not that much, to make you see it better. So the first thing we do is we read the problem. So I'm going to leave it up there for a minute or two for you to read the problem. And if you're watching this not in class, feel free to pause it if you want to look at it for more time. Okay, I hope you have had time to look at this. So what we're going to do now, if you didn't have time to look at this, if I'm playing this for you, ask me to pause it, and otherwise you can pause it yourself. So this is a puzzle game. And remember, contest 3 focuses on arrays. And so what we have here is a 3x3 array, and each array entry, there are 9 array entries. They can have 3 possible values, A, B, or C. So let's see. So then they tell you that some of them are already filled in. In this example, there's an A, a C, and another A. And then they give you 5 lines of input for the 5 different problems. And what happens then is you have to fill it out so that you have one of each letter in each row and one of each letter in each column. So I have a couple of thoughts after staring at this for a while. One of my thoughts is that, well, my first thought was, well, I'll try every different possibility for each square. I'll try putting an A, B, and C, and if it works, But that's actually a lot of different things to try, and we can be a little bit smarter than that. So if I look at the first example, I know that there's a B in the middle. There's only one thing that will fit in that row. So I'm going to start by going row by row. And now the first row might be blank like the second row is, but even then there's only 6 possibilities. ABC, ACB, BAC, BCA, CAB, CBA. So there's 6 possibilities for each row. So that is not sort of too many to try, especially if you just write it into a loop, which we will do. So that is one of the things that I see, is that the first row, there's anywhere between 1 and 6 choices. The second row, there's anywhere between 1 and 6 choices. And actually for the third row, once you fill in the first 2 rows, there are, you can just see, you don't have to go through all the possibilities. If I have an A and a B in the first column, then I know the last row, the first column has to be a C. So I've gotten it down from a very large number of possibilities. In this case, if I just tried all the different letters, it would be, well, there's 6 blank ones and I have 3 choices. It would be 3 to the 6th, which I don't have that particular number memorized, but actually I do. It's 729. So 729 is a lot to go through. But like I said, we can be a little bit smarter and just look at the first row, see which of the 6 possibilities work. Look at the second row, see which of the 6 possibilities work. And then finally, see if there's any possibility that works for the third row. So the other thing that I'm thinking is that, you know, ACSL loves these grids, that games that happen on grids, which would be a 2-dimensional array usually. But they've sort of given us a hint there that maybe that is not what we need to happen. What is going on here is that they have numbered the squares 1 through 9. And so instead of going 1, 1, 1, 2, etc. So I'm going to try to get by with a 1-dimensional array just of length 9, because that's a little bit easier to deal with than the 2-dimensional arrays. So this may or may not work on a different problem, but I have high hopes for it on this one. So then the first thing that we do typically is write some pseudocode, or at least comments on our code of what we're going to do before we do it. So I'm going to pause the recording and then do some of that. Okay, I'm back. So the first thing that you want to do is decide, you know, have a plan as to how you're going to do the problem. You may have to change your plan later, but if you go in there with no plan, you're not going to know, you're like, where do I start? So I can't use HackerRank to do this, so I'm using CoCalc instead. And so I tried to make it like HackerRank in that there's a function called ABC solution. And the way I did it, and I put that in the comments in the first 3 lines, is that it gives you 2 inputs. N is an int, that is the number of squares filled. Why don't I just say that N is an int, number of squares filled, and S is a list of the squares filled and what letter to fill them with. So for example, if the first list item is 3A, that means put an A in a square 3. If we go back to the problem, they gave you these sample inputs, and generally the way they've been doing things in HackerRank is you don't have to read everything in yourself. And so I made a guess as to how they might do this on a HackerRank type platform. And what I did is, there's that code in HackerRank that you're not allowed to edit because it processes your answer and outputs it, and processes the inputs and gives it to you. Before that, I wrote something down here. Please don't look at it too carefully, but that is the code to check whether or not you get the right answer, to give you the input, and it knows the right answer. I just copied and pasted it from the document on the website, and that actually took me most of the time I had paused the recording. So you can be really elaborate if you like to be. I know some programmers like this, but you even just a 4-step process, or however many steps you think are appropriate, will help you know, okay, what am I starting out writing? So so the your answer goes here is what you typically see in the HackerRank problems. And then I said, okay, first I need to set up my array. Second, you fill the array with the initial letters that you're given. Third, you do some searching to find the correct magic ABC square. And then finally, you're going to have an array, but you're supposed to return a string. So you're going to convert that to a string and return it. Okay, and you see below that I have this is just a test, and I return the first sample output over here. Why do I do that? Because I want to make sure that I understood the question, and you can cheat on the sample inputs and just make sure that you know, hey, I'm supposed to return a string, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and run this code. And then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and you see sample problem 0. It gave me credit for being correct on that one, and all the other ones were incorrect. So that's just something I like to do, is that if I'm given one of the answers, the way to, quote unquote, cheat, it won't give you any points because it's a sample problem. You just feed it back the answer and see if that works. So now that I have my problem set up, I have 4 tasks ahead of me. And it's not like one big task of get the right answer. It's 4 tasks, and so that's doable. And so I'm going to take some time. I'm going to go away, and I'm going to write the code for the first part of it where we set up the array. So I am going to pause the recording, and I'll see you back here soon. Okay, I'm back. That only took a few minutes. So what I have done here is I've set up the array. And remember, I was thinking of setting up it as a single dimensional array. Looking at the problem, they describe everything in terms of 1 through 9. So I think it's going to be a lot easier, because otherwise, if I have a 2-dimensional array and it tells me, like it does in the second problem, to put C in space 6, I can just put C in space 6 without having to go, okay, that is the 3rd column of the 2nd row. So I'm just going to try that. So I went with a 1-dimensional array, and then I just set it to be blank, and I appended the letter X to each of them. I could have made it blank, but I just wanted something to tell me that I haven't figured that out yet. And so at the start, I haven't figured any of them out because I haven't even looked at the input. And why did I make it 10 long instead of 9 long? Because all of the ACSL input is for 1 through 9, and Python wants it to start with 0. So I'm just going to have a 0 in there that I'm never going to do anything with. And then I have 1 through 9, and I don't have to shift it over by 1 and back. I want to make this sort of as simple as possible to prevent me spending time making a bunch of mistakes. And then I read in S. S is the, remember, S is the list of the squares filled. And I could have done for I in range 0, n, which would have got, because I know n tells me how many there are, but I don't actually even need n here. S is my list, and I go through all of the items in my list. And so for each item in my list, entry 0 is the number, and entry 1 is the letter. So the index that I need to update is given by item 0, and the thing I need to update it to is item 1. And then finally, why do I have a print here? The reason I have a print here is that I'm only partway through my program, and it helps to make sure the program is doing what I really think it's doing. You'll take all the prints out so it doesn't confuse HackerRank and it thinks it's part of your answer. You're going to take that all out at the end, but use the tools you're given, and print is an amazingly valuable tool in pretty much any language. So we're going to run this, and we got a lot of things here that that are we can compare. So the first one is XAX, CXX. I'm sorry, I forgot to ignore the first one. So one way that we can do this, ignore the first one, is we print my square, and we're going to print it from 1 on. So that is that's the little thing that says ignore the first thing. So we have AXC, XXX, XAX. So let's go back to our diagram, and AXC, XXX, XAX. That looks like I've done the first one correct. I could check for the other ones, but right now I'm feeling good about that. So I'm going to move on to doing the second part, which is, if I scroll back up, oh wait, I did the second part. See, sometimes you're on a roll. So I set up the array, and then I filled it with the initial letters. And so I'm already on to part 3, which is find the correct array. So that's going to be actually probably the hardest part, because you're not just reading in data and doing what they tell you to do. You have to come up with a way of figuring out how to solve the problem. And remember, I told you a way that I had thought of before, which is I'm going to try all the possibilities for the first row. I'm going to try all the possibilities for the second row. And for each of those possibilities for the first 2 rows, I'm going to see if I can find an answer for the third row that matches both the columns and the rows. So I'm going to go ahead and pause, and I'll come back when that is done. So I will see you then. Okay, I'm back. I'm back a little bit early, actually, because since this third part is so big, I didn't just want to do it and then come back and say, oh, look, magically we have the answer. So it's not magic. This is, there was some thinking I had to do. I changed my plan a little bit. So the first thing I did was I made a list of rows. So this is actually a 2-dimensional array, because it's a list, and the rows are each list. So it's a list of lists, which is a 2-dimensional array. So it's hard to escape them, but it was pretty simple to make. And all I did was make a blank one, and then I appended these 4 different possible rows that I mentioned earlier. And then what did I do? Well, I thought, well, you know what? Why don't I just, if I have 6 choices for the first row, 6 choices for the second row, 6 choices for the third row, 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. Going through all 216 choices is not that bad. So we're just going to go through all 216 possibilities. And if for any reason we know it's not going to work, we're going to just throw that one out. So what I did here is, you can see at the bottom that I have good equals 1. So that's a variable. I could have done actually true. That would have probably been a little bit better Python programming, but good equals 1. So we start out assuming that it's going to be a good choice. And then we set it to 0 if for any reason we say, hey, these 3 choices are not going to work. And so what I ended up doing is you can see for the first, what I did for the first row, if you look at the bottom, so I said for first in rows, so I'm going to pick something to be the first row. And then, so I start with ABC, and it's for entry in first. And getting the ranges right is a little bit tricky, and I haven't actually run this yet, so I'm not sure I got the ranges right. But for each entry in the first row, if the entry is not equal to what I've already got filled in the square, and I'm just reading through this code, and I see that there's a problem, because what if it's an X? I don't really care if it's an X. So I'm going to add on to this, and my square I does not equal X. So if you have an A and a B, that row isn't going to be equal because it's supposed to be A, but you're trying to put a B in there, or vice versa. You can only do if it matches. So I'm going to need this particular bit of code again because I messed it up with the other rows. So I am going to copy it. So now we have another loop, and keep in mind, you can see by the indentation in Python, this is a nested, what's called a nested for loop. It's a for loop inside our other for loop. And what it's doing is it's saying, okay, we're going to pick something for first, and then we're going to go through all the possibilities for second. And as you can guess later, once we've picked the first and second, we're going to go through all the possibilities for third. So we do the same darn thing right here, where we just say, what if the entries don't match and it's not an X, then we're going to say good equals 0. And again, with the third nested one, you can imagine there's a certain amount of copying and pasting here. And what I meant to do on the bottom one is print it if it's passed all these tests. So what we're going to do here is we're going to see if which ones get eliminated through our first one. And it's not a bad idea sometimes to stop part way and give a partial answer and print it out, just to make sure the program is doing what you think it's doing. Taking a little risk here because I did not test this code before I resumed the recording. My experience, code usually doesn't work the first time, but I'm going to hope it does. So I'm going to click run, and we'll go to the bottom, and I got an indentation error, which is what always gets to you in Python. So I'm going to pause the recording while I fix that. Okay, I'm back for a second. I fixed the syntax errors. I had also had an extra for loop, or actually a few extra for loops in there, because I rethought how to do the problem and didn't erase my earlier thoughts. So now it's running, and as you can see, it's only printing out the answers, the possible answers for some of them and not all of them. So I have to go back in and figure out why that is. and fix that. So it's a good thing that I didn't just keep programming and check the answer at the end, because something's already gone wrong here. So I'm going to check what that is. Okay, I'm back. So I dug through my code to see what the problem was. I had just made a conceptual error there. I had set good equal to 1 before I started searching, and then if I found something bad, I set good equal to 0. But then when I tried something new, I didn't actually reset good to 0. So what I've done is just mostly cut and paste. I've moved the good equals 1 and all of the tests inside the third loop. So what I do now is, I see I have another indentation error. Let's fix that. Oops, let's fix that correctly. And 1, 2, 3, 4. And so what happens now is I pick a first, I pick a second, I pick a third, and then I check each of them and set good equal to 0. For any of those, I have another indentation error. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I missed one. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Oops. Okay, that is frustrating. Okay, so that looks like it's right now. We check all 3 of them and set good equals 0 if we have any mismatch. And if after all that it still passes, we're going to print it out. And again, we still need to put in the checks where are the columns have exactly 1 A, B, and C. We've ensured that all rows have exactly 1 A, B, C, because that's the only rows that we're considering. But let's go ahead, run it, cross our fingers, and see, yes. So here we see it's still saying test, or saying sample problem 0 is correct because of this. Because we gave it the answer. Sample problem 1 is incorrect. Sample problem 2 didn't print out anything. That's a little bit of a concern. And all the other ones printed something out. So that's good. I'm going to take a second to see what's wrong with sample problem 2, fix it, and let you know why it didn't print out anything before. So I'll be back as soon as I have that sorted out. Okay, hi, I'm back. What happened was a very common error that is dangerous. So I said, oh, I actually said earlier, hey, I did a lot of cut and pasting. And what I had actually done before was when I cut and pasted this thing where I checked the second row, this word, instead of being third, was second. I never changed that part of it to third. So it was checking things about the second row, and that doesn't work. So if I ran it again, and if I scroll down here, for each of the sample problems, it narrows down the answers. And actually for sample problem 2, with the one I was having problems before, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 answers. But if I look at the first answer, I see they both have C's in the third column. So I'm going to quickly write some code. I don't think it'll be that hard to get the third, to check that condition that the columns can't repeat. And then we should be most of the way to the answer. We just then have to package it up and return it back to the main part of the program. So I'm going to go do that. Okay, I added just a little piece of code that I'm hoping will do the trick. So what it does is for 0, 1, and 2, it looks at entry 0 of first and second, and if they're the same, that's not allowed. So it sets good to 0, first and third if they're the same. That's not allowed. So you set it to 0, same as second and third, and I believe that's all the possibilities. So that should work. Remember, we still have this section where we convert it to a string and return it, but if it prints out the right answer, and keep your fingers crossed, but know that there are usually problems, then we'll be almost all the way there. So I'm running it, and oh, so this is fantastic. So it prints out exactly one answer for each problem. And for the first one, it's ABC, BCA, CAB. And we can even look, ABC, BCA, CAB. We are in good shape. So that did all of the checks. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to make sure that we have that we can convert this to some output, and then collect 5 points and go enjoy the rest of the time I had set aside for programming. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this, and I'll see you once I have that last little bit written. Okay, so I wrote the last bit, and there are lots of different ways. You know, the thing about Python is sometimes you can just do it step by step, but sometimes there are little tricks you can use. So what I did was I started to build the string. I set it to an empty string, and I was going to go through first and add the 3 letters from first, and go through second and add the 3 letters from third. I'm sorry, go through second, add the 3 letters from second, go through third, add the 3 letters from third. But then I was like, wait a second, I remember something. This is Python, I can add lists together. So first, second, and third are lists of row entries. So I did for X in first plus second plus third, which means go through first, go through second, go through third. Because it's a list, it keeps the order in the same order. And so then I set my return equal to my return plus X. So I kept, it's the equivalent of appending. And then I returned it. And then I scrolled down here and it said, hey, you got them all correct. So that's 5 points. This was a little bit, I think this was a little bit more complicated than some of the problems. It was nice that it was only a 3 by 3 grid. And so that was pretty cool. So one of the things I've taught you now that we have some time is that there's some stuff that you can ignore. So in this problem, the first sentence says, easy as ABC is a puzzle game by, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Wei Wa Wong. And so you don't need to know the name of it. You don't need to know who created it. But I thought, you know, that's interesting. They actually mentioned the guy who created it. I wonder what I can learn about this guy. So I am going to, let's just say, I'm going to search for his Wikipedia page. And so he's a little bit younger than me. And he's a famous person. He's got his own Wikipedia page. He competed on the International Math Olympiad team, which is sort of the top of the top high school math competition. I know some people who did that, and they are very impressive at particularly problem solving. And he awarded a silver medal, which is good. Of course, there's gold too. A Putnam Fellow, the Putnam is sort of the top college math competition, and I believe the Putnam Fellows are the top 5. And I know even more of those people, and those are some really, really good people in terms of if you see somebody who did that, usually you wait 20 years and you can see, oh, they did something really impressive. And so what did this guy? He's won the World Puzzle Championship. He won Sudoku National Championship. He won some other things. He designed this game I've actually played called Roll for the Galaxy. He co-designed it, so good for him. He's graduated from Montgomery Blair High School, which is just across the Potomac in Montgomery County, Maryland. I am from Maryland originally, so I always like to see when another Maryland kid does good. He went to Caltech, which is a top-notch school, and he worked at Google until 2008. And one of the things that tells me is he got in there early. So I don't see what he's doing now, but that's probably because he was able, I know somebody who was one of Google's first employees and retired at like age 35. So he probably did pretty well for himself out of all that. And seems like an impressive guy. So that's one of the things, like I said, you don't have to worry about this. And you know, in general, you're not supposed to Google things during this, but this is an opportunity. It's one of the great, I mean, I've told you some great things about programming. You can make mistakes, and it's not like you get a red mark on your paper. You just have to fix them again. And another is you can get distracted. You can say, oh, I wonder who this guy is. And as long as you don't go, okay, well, now I'm going to go to the library and look up his book. You know, as long as you don't get distracted for hours, you can come back and do the problem. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, whether you're in my learning pod or just found this on YouTube. And good luck on programming contest number 3.